This video is sponsored by Ridge Wallets. Use the code Harbo for 15% off your next wallet. And before this video begins, I'd like to give a special shout out to my Asbantium level patron, Fallon Cortez. Doctor Who Series 6. Depending on your taste, those 4 words either send a ghastly chill through your bones or cause an excited buzz in your brain. Yes, it's safe to say that the 2011 series of the iconic Blue Box show has a very divisive legacy. After bridging the gap between eras with Series 5, showrunner Stephen Moffat wanted to change the very nature of Doctor Who, altering the fabric of the show and introducing huge changes, something influenced by increased popularity and funding in the American market. Having established the 11th Doctor and his companions, it was time for new adventures, raising the stakes higher than ever before and delving into the origins of the enigmatic River Song. From the very beginning, Series 6 was designed to make a splash and really shake things up. And it's safe to say it did, introducing groundbreaking new lore and influencing the show for years to come. But such changes are always a massive risk. And as I mentioned, the series would end up becoming one of the most divisive series of the modern era, a reputation you could argue still remains to this day. I've been working my way through each individual episode if you want detailed breakdowns, but episodes on their own can flatter to deceive. So it's time to dive into the complicated mess of Doctor Who Series 6. But I'll tell you what's not a complicated mess. A Ridge wallet. Let's face it, at some point in your life you've had to carry around a huge chunky wallet that weighs you down and sticks out your pocket. But what if I told you there was an alternative? That's where Ridge wallets come in. They're durable, modern wallets that hold up to 12 cards along with cash, so I guess you could say they're bigger on the inside. I love how light these wallets are. They're perfectly compact, so if you're like me and you like wearing skinny jeans, they don't leave an outline or feel like a weighty burden reminding you of your financial mistakes. I mean, come on, I just had to buy that life-size cardboard cutout of Paul McGann. It was calling to me. I also like how much variety there is, with over 30 different colours and styles to choose from, like titanium, which I have right here. There's also RFID blocking technology, which protects your cards from those sneaky digital pickpockets, so you never have to worry about carrying your wallet around in public again. It's Father's Day soon, and you might have been wondering what to get your dad. Well, head over to ridge.com/Harbo and use the code Harbo for 15% off the perfect gift. It's a great deal, and these wallets have over 40,000 5-star reviews, so you know you're getting quality, especially with a lifetime warranty. But if you still aren't satisfied, then no worries, because you can test drive your wallet for 45 days, and if you aren't satisfied with it, you can send it back for a full refund. So for the ideal Father's Day present, or just as a nice treat for yourself, why not get a Ridge wallet? And remember, that's the link in the description below, and the code Harbo for 15% off. Once again, a big thank you to Ridge for sponsoring this video, and on with the review.
Take off your clothes.
Probably the biggest part of Series 6 is its decision to adopt a stricter, more serialised approach with its storytelling. With the exception of The Key to Time and Trial of a Time Lord, Doctor Who had always tried to prioritise anthologies, with almost every episode or serial being standalone and self-contained. You could easily just put on The Girl in the Fireplace or The Unicorn and the Wasp and understand what's going on without needing to watch everything before and after it. Of course, there were still story arcs like the words Bad Wolf and Torchwood appearing in Series 1 and 2, Harold Saxon rising to power in the background of Series 3, and numerous plots happening during Series 4. But outside of multi-part stories, the episodes all remained standalone and self-contained. This all changed with Series 6, with showrunner Stephen Moffat deciding to implement a heavily interconnected storyline, with multiple episodes across the span of the series directly building and continuing plot threads to be paid off in the finale. Indeed, 7 out of the 13 episodes in Series 6 are related to this ongoing narrative and need to be watched to understand everything that's going on. This storyline begins with the Doctor's death at the beginning of the series, before introducing us to the villainous Madame Kavarian and the Silence, revealing who River Song actually is, and then wrapping back round to the start by showing how the Doctor faked his death. It's a very big and ambitious storyline, but does it actually work? Well, if you've spent any time in Doctor Who fan circles over the past 11 years, you'd probably say, no it doesn't. Yes, despite its ambition and massive scale, the Series 6 story arc falls short for a number of reasons. First of all, it's not serialised enough. The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon hit the ground running. Together they set up so many different mysteries and storylines, really giving you the sense that it's building to something big. I mean, the Doctor literally dies for good. No regeneration, that's it. That's how the series begins. It's everything you could ask for in a series opener. There's excellent location filming that shows the biggest scale of the story, flexing the new budget and popularity of Doctor Who. It's a melting pot of genres, perfectly blending action, horror, mystery, and even some romance into the mix. It introduces us to the Silence, which are creative and sinister monsters used brilliantly in a narrative, with their memory-erasing gimmick handled exceptionally. Everything in these 2 episodes sets up the series in the best way possible, almost like a full-blown mystery. It strikes the ideal balance between old and new, helping to guide the viewer into this new era of more serialised storytelling, since most of the 2-parter is wrapped up by the end, but there are still mysteries to explore, like the Doctor's death and the mysterious little girl who straight up regenerates at the end, which is a hugely significant moment to really hook the viewer and reel them in, making them interested in the rest of the story. But then the series just ignores it. We go from a big, mind-blowing opening story to a completely inconsequential episode about pirates.
Or we could just go off and have some adventures. Anyone in the mood for adventures? Because I am. You only live once.
Yes, despite garnering this significant momentum, Series 6 pretty much throws it all away by going right back to normal. Instead of continuing the intriguing storyline we were introduced to at the beginning, Curse of the Black Spot and the Doctor's Wife are more traditional Doctor Who episodes, with little to no impact on the wider series. There's barely even a mention of anything that happened, so interest in the overall story cools off quicker than CM Punk in AEW. And don't get me wrong, Curse of the Black Spot is good and the Doctor's Wife is incredible, but they just feel pointless and irrelevant, which happens again in the second half of the series, as Night Terrors, The Girl Who Waited and the God Complex are similarly disconnected from the plot. Anytime Series 6 starts to build up significant momentum, it immediately returns to the safety of the existing formula, and that completely derails the experience of watching Series 6. The standalone episodes are the highlights of the series, but they shouldn't even exist within this kind of interlinked story. It's like Stranger Things Season 2, which has a completely unrelated episode everyone completely hated because it served no real purpose. So on a structural level, Series 6 just never really gets going. You go from heavily serialized episodes like A Good Man Goes to War and Let's Kill Hitler, to utterly unrelated episodes like Night Terrors and The Girl Who Waited, which feels like driving 200 miles an hour into a brick wall because they do absolutely nothing to further the story. As divisive as Series 13 would prove to be, I think it has the structure Series 6 should have had. Rather than having half the episodes unnecessary fluff, it tells a direct story across 6 parts, so there's never a random break in the storyline. Say what you will about the quality of Flux, at least it stuck with its story and didn't randomly wander off for 3 episodes in a row and shove Eve of the Daleks halfway through. Moffat has long stated that he believes Series 6 should be binged, but that still doesn't excuse all the standalone stories. In my opinion, a better solution would have been to capitalise on the split series format and roll Series 6 and 7A together in a more organised manner. Have 2011's Series 6A comprise of The Impossible Astronaut, Day of the Moon, The Rebel Flesh, The Almost People, A Good Man Goes to War, Let's Kill Hitler, The God Complex, Closing Time and Wedding of River Song. It condenses the story of the Silence, the Doctor's death, the origin of River Song into 9 episodes directly connected and bunched together so you follow the story as it happens without unnecessary detours. It's all a concise package that perfectly lends itself to binging. You have the mystery, the plot points, the villains and all the reveals within the same 6 or 7 hours of TV, just like the modern narrative dramas it was trying to be. There's never random episodes getting in the way because even the filler episodes like God Complex and Closing Time play a role in the overall series. By the time you get to Wedding of River Song and close out the first half of the series, you've taken a direct path through the storyline, and structurally it all works. Obviously the storyline itself would still be a bit naff, but the format would be much better, and The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe would be an epilogue between the series, transitioning into 2012 Series 6B, where Asylum of the Daleks kicks off the second half, followed by The Doctor's Wife, Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, A Town Called Mercy, Night Terrors and The Power of Three. Then you have Curse of the Black Spot and The Girl Who Waited to remind you of the strength of Amy and Rory's relationship, making their departure in the series finale, Angels Take Manhattan, hit that much harder, and end this era of the 11th Doctor's life. 6A tells the more obvious story of the Doctor's death and everything associated with it, while Series 6B has a more character-based approach exploring the aftermath and the relationships between the main characters. Sure, you'd have 9 episodes either side of the Christmas special, but it would fix a lot of the problems associated with Series 6 and 7A, so it just works better all around, making things flow much smoother and giving them a purpose.
The Doctor's darkest hour he'll rise higher than ever before and then fall so much further.
But we also need to talk about the actual Series 6 story arc itself, since it's very confusing and has more holes than an overstaffed brothel. So let's try to break it down in chronological order to first make sense of it, and then pick it apart like an acne-riddled teen picking scabs. So, due to the events on Trenzalore, where the Doctor has the power to bring back the Time Lords, Madame Kavarian breaks with the Church of the Papal Mainframe to travel back in time and kill the Doctor before he can arrive at Trenzalore. She and the Silence blow up the TARDIS, but this is undone by the Doctor, so they instead decide to create an assassin to kill him directly. Kavarian kidnaps a pregnant Amy before she and Rory travel to America, replacing her with a flesh ganger to trick the Doctor and Rory. Amy then gives birth to the half-Time Lord Melody Pond, and the Doctor arrives to rescue them, but Kavarian tricks him and escapes with Melody, raising her as the assassin. Because there's a prophecy about the Doctor dying to an astronaut at Lake Silencio on April 22nd, 2011, the Silence influenced the 1969 space race to acquire a spacesuit to put Melody inside. However, the Doctor once again scuppers this plan by defeating the Silence for good, and in turn unknowingly allowing Melody to escape, where she regenerates into Mel's. Mel's tracks down Amy and Rory, integrating herself into their lives as a friend. However, when she encounters the Doctor, her programming kicks in and she tries to kill him, only to have a change of heart and save his life, becoming River Song and enrolling in Lunar University to one day find him again. However, Kavarian and the Silence track her down and force her back into the suit, making her kill the Doctor against her will. However, the Doctor had actually made a deal with the shapeshifting Tesselector robot, so he's able to fake his death to trick the Silence and adopt a low profile, eventually returning to Amy and Rory and living happily ever after. That's the storyline in its broad sense. Sounds perfectly reasonable and on the surface it's fine, but when you actually start to look at it, it really doesn't make any sense, especially because the finale literally has nothing to do with it. So first of all, why is the Kavarian scheme so overly complicated? They want to kill the Doctor for good to stop him speaking his name, so why not just walk up to him and shoot him in the face? Why do they need a Time Lord assassin to do it? It's not even like the Doctor can easily outsmart them to survive a direct attack, since even he is affected by the mind wipe gimmick of the Silence, so it really makes no sense that they need River to be involved. And if you go by the fixed point explanation of there having to be an astronaut, that still doesn't make any sense because the spacesuit can function without anyone inside. So outside of the obvious character drama, why does this happen? Why does Kavarian need to go through all that effort when slipping 10 quid to a Dalek army would suffice? I guess you could say the Doctor is more vulnerable when it's someone he trusts, but then why not just use a ganger? Speaking of, why did the Silence kidnap Amy in Day of the Moon? This isn't actually the real Amy, so what's the point in taking her? It would make more sense if this was where they do the switch, but apparently it happened before, so this is just a ganger. And also, what was the deal with them trying to get Amy to tell the Doctor either about her pregnancy or his death? Surely alerting him to either would jeopardise their plans. Also, why do they need to create an entire space race just to gain access to a spacesuit? So much of it doesn't make any sense, which isn't ideal for a heavily connected series like this. And we can't forget about the confusing mess of a still point, fixed point, plot point in the finale, which makes things even more confusing because we're not even given enough information about it all. How do you know what's a still point in time, and what needs to happen to make that a fixed point? It makes no sense, and the series doesn't even really bother trying to make it make sense.
We all have to die, Doctor. But you more than most. You do see that, don't you?
Nothing represents the confusing nature of Series 6 like the finale, The Wedding of River Song. This episode is, to put it bluntly, a complete waste of time. It's essentially completely pointless and ends up an unsatisfying, confusing mess. Rather than paying off all the story threads, it instead elects to jump into an alternate timeline. The only thing it does is explain how the Doctor faked his death, something that could have easily been done in a much more fulfilling way. It's the finale of a serialized, interconnected storyline, so you'd expect it to wrap up everything neatly, seeing the Doctor vanquish his enemies and triumph. But it's just a baffling, incoherent mess that doesn't know what it wants to be. About 20 minutes of the episode is the Doctor running from his death, then the next 20 minutes is the alternate timeline since River decided not to kill him. Then the last 5 minutes is revealing he never died anyway. So why did they all end up in an alternate timeline? Who knows? Nothing in the episode actually matters. And that first 20 minutes of him learning to accept his death goes completely out the window because, yeah, he never dies anyway, so he never actually has to face that. The actual villains aren't defeated, the universe breaks due to the same event playing out a different way, and the episode erases its own existence at the end. It's not a good ending to a series like this with with so many moving parts. It's full of random technobabble and exposition, basically just relying on slick vibes and style over actual substance and rewarding storytelling. I think Series 6 just suffers from a lack of identity, probably because Stephen Moffat was trying to balance his showrunning duties on both Doctor Who and Sherlock. This meant that Doctor Who Series 6 just doesn't have enough of a firm focus to it. The series changes its plan constantly. At the beginning we're told the silence are the main villains and they're incredibly well utilised, but then they rather ironically get forgotten about until the last 2 episodes. It's hard to get engaged with a central threat when it's constantly shifting, since A Good Man Goes to War randomly introduces the Headless Monks, when the silence could have easily served the same purpose to make it more cohesive. Similarly, they could have played a role in Let's Kill Hitler to show their influence on the world before 1969, orchestrating World War II, puppeting the world leaders to maintain the right course in history needed for the later stages of their plan. Then there's also the fact that Let's Kill Hitler has a whole scene of the Tesselector toggling its exposition mode to explain parts of the plot arc to the Doctor. Having the actual silence there would instead help make this explanation feel a lot more natural, along with involving the monsters in their own arc. It would tie things together so effectively and remind you of the villains behind everything that's happening. The silence are completely wasted in Series 6. In the opening story they're a mystery with an incredible premise, but in the finale they're a complete afterthought. They contribute nothing and become mere cannon fodder. The Silence had the potential to become one of the most iconic Doctor Who monsters on par with the Daleks and Weeping Angels. They have a truly terrifying setup with so much potential, which is why they feel so wasted. The finale making a point to cancel out their entire gimmick and treat them like bullet sponges, instead of one of the deadliest and hardest to fight foes in the show's history. Similarly, Madame Kavarin is also wasted potential. Much like the silence she represents, she begins the series as an interesting mystery, popping up to Amy and Amy alone here and there before A Good Man Goes to War reveals her as the mastermind behind the Melody Pond scheme, because she hates the Doctor. Why? No idea, it's not really explored. Kavarin has such little screen time that we never get a good sense of her characteristics or personality. We don't know who she is or where she comes from, and we only find that out in a throwaway line 2 years later. For most of Series 6 she's built up as this huge threat, always one step ahead, so it should feel fitting and cathartic in the finale when her own monsters turn on her and attack her, but it doesn't land for 2 main reasons. First of all, it's rushed and suffers from her not being fleshed out enough. For a twist like this, we need to truly understand her character traits and her ego, making it satisfying as she orchestrates her own downfall, but we don't get that. It instead just happens and it feels way too sudden and rushed. And then the second main problem is the fact that she isn't even the same Kavarian from the rest of Series 6. Due to the divergent timeline, the wedding of River Song takes place in a different, alternate universe which only the Doctor, Amy and River can remember being in. This means everything that happened in the episode doesn't carry back over to the Prime universe, including Kavarian's death. Yes, hilariously, the literal main villain of Series 6 is never actually dealt with. It's Moffat trying to have his cake and eat it too, since he wants Amy to have her moment of revenge on Kavarian for everything she's gone through. But he also doesn't want the Doctor's companion to do something so dark, so he makes it an alternate universe cop-out, removing any consequence and making you wonder what the point of it all was. It's a shame that the Series 6 story arc is so disappointing because the individual components of the series are actually really good. Let's start with the individual episodes. I've already said how good the opening 2-parter is, but Curse of the Black Spot is definitely an underrated episode within the series. The pirate setting is fun and fresh, realised with some great music and set design, really immersing you in the adventure. There's some excellent character writing regarding Avery, Amy and Rory, culminating in a beautifully made final scene. Really, the main issues with Curse of the Black Spot are the unimaginative villain, since the creepy and ethereal siren actually just turns out to be a well-meaning medical AI, and the fact that the episode was heavily rewritten and edited because it wasn't meant to be where it is. Instead, it was meant to be after Let's Kill Hitler, exploring the aftermath of the River storyline on Amy and Rory, so it's quite disjointed. A similar fate befalls the episode that traded places with, Night Terrors. Night Terrors is a very forgettable episode that just doesn't stand out amongst the rest in Series 6. Admittedly, there's a creepy tone with some nice directing, along with the use of everyday horror creating the very memorable peg doll monsters, but the episode is uneven and relies on its characters to drag it through, especially the relationship between George and Alex. As an overall package, it's just a bit bland and inoffensive, lost within the herd, since it's followed by 2 incredible standalone episodes, making Night Terrors not very rewatchable or important, so all of its concepts, themes and characters kind of go to waste. However, these aren't issues that affect the Doctor's wife, which is by far one of the standouts of the series. It's absolutely phenomenal on every level, with gorgeous directing and effects work. It's written perfectly by Neil Gaiman with lots of fun and snappy moments and memorable lines. It has a small cast, but it uses them well, like Amy and Rory being locked inside the TARDIS with a truly chilling villain, House. This disembodied entity known simply as House is an exceptional antagonist, constantly displaying endless power and proven a finale-worthy adversary for the Doctor. It's also a fascinating idea to turn the TARDIS into a character. The Doctor and Idris have incredible chemistry, which stops the concept from feeling too gimmicky. It's one of those episodes that just gets everything right, every aspect coming together to form a truly magnificent experience. The same applies for The Girl Who Waited and The God Complex. These 2 episodes shift the focus away from a clear-cut epic villain and instead focus on the characters involved. The Girl Who Waited is essentially the redemption of Amy Pond. She was a massively unlikable character in Series 5, who mistreated everyone around her, but this single episode does so much to improve her character. Karen Gillan plays both an older and younger version of Amy, which allows the heartbreaking storyline of Rory having to choose between them really shine, consolidating their relationship in the perfect way. For a lower budget episode, the directing and visuals are sublime, and it explores moral and ethical dilemmas in such a creative and engaging way. It could even almost be a full-on standalone movie. In the same vein, The God Complex is a gripping exploration of faith with its abstract narrative about existential concepts. From the surreal hotel setting to the creepy rooms filled with fears, the episode addresses its core questions and themes in the perfect Doctor Who way, mixing in wit and charm whilst never losing sight of its high concept premise, as evidenced by the excellent camera work. The supporting cast are all exceptional, especially Rita, along with the departure of Amy and Rory serving as the perfect ending to the story. As with The Girl Who Waited, it's not a story about the monsters, since neither the Handbots nor the Minotaur are really a big enough deal to focus the story on. So the character-based approach is an inspired choice, elevating the God Complex to possibly the greatest 11th Doctor episode. But then the series immediately takes a nosedive with Closing Time, which just kind of sucks. It's a tonal mess, not sure whether it wants to be a fun runaround comedic episode or a deep character study regarding the Doctor's impending death. Considering the darker, more high concept stories making up the bulk of Series 6, Closing Time feels out of place, wasting the Cybermen by prioritising the baby and Stormageddon. It's an insulting way to use one of Doctor Who's best villains, along with the episode taking the place of what should have been the first part to the absolutely disastrous Wedding of River song.
My time is running out.
We've already talked about the opening 2-parter and the finale, but the other plot-centric episodes aren't exactly anything to write home about. The Flesh 2-parter is a complete waste of potential. There are so many incredible themes, but it doesn't explore them in an entertaining or engaging way. It's a boring, badly paced story. The cliffhanger leads into the mid-series finale really well, but the process to get there is such a slog. It throws away so many fascinating concepts about clones, human rights, and the exploitation of workers, along with unionizing, uprisings, and revolutions. It does this all in such a boring way, and you can basically skip the whole story, since only the last scene really matters in the grand scheme of things. It leads into similar disappointment in A Good Man Goes to War, which is purely style over substance. It spends so long worshipping the Doctor that it fails at most of its basic fundamentals. It's an episode that pretty much only exists to be the big twist of River being Melody, so it doesn't succeed as this big epic team up to show the Doctor's hubris, because only one random side character pays the price, and it really muddles the Doctor's character, unsure of whether to endorse or condemn his actions. The villains get completely overshadowed by info dumps and exposition, so it doesn't serve as a satisfying narrative, just like its follow-up Let's Kill Hitler.
Right. putting Hitler in the cupboard.
This chaotic mess of an episode is everything wrong with the Smith era of Doctor Who. There's way too much going on and it has such an uneven tone, along with shockingly stop-start pacing. There's barely a plot there. It relies on the Mel's reveal, but she was never a character before, so it isn't an effective twist. Then there's also the Tesselector, which basically only exists to set up the cop-out in the finale. So the whole story feels so insincere and manufactured. Oh, and River also gets Flanderized here, ruining the character both through Moffat's horniness for her and the episode explaining every single aspect of her personality and her backstory. So it rips away any mystery or interest left in the character. So the episodes are a mixed bag, but the characters are really where the series shines. Amy and Rory have consistent great performances, their relationship becoming a lot healthier and more genuine than it was in Series 5. You really grow attached to them and appreciate the moments they share in episodes like Curse of the Black Spot and The Girl Who Waited. They're handled a lot better on a character level, especially Rory, whose role in the series is elevated now that he's a full-time companion alongside his wife. He gets a lot more to do, which helps expand the dynamic between the characters, although he is still mainly comic relief.
America salutes you.
The Doctor is also significantly improved. Now don't get me wrong, Matt Smith hit the ground running in Series 5, and his take on the Doctor was immediately incredible, but his work in Series 6 is even better. Like with David Tennant before him, he's more comfortable in the role during his second series, since he's had the chance to really grow into the character and become the Doctor. Everything comes naturally to Smith during this series. He absolutely nails the darkness and the comedy, switching between the two perfectly within seconds at times. Almost every episode has a superb Doctor moment. Even Closing Time has some incredible scenes as he reflects upon his impending death, really reminding you that this is a 1,000-year-old Time Lord having to accept his permanent death after everything he's done and everything he's achieved. During Series 5, Smith leaned a bit more into the comedic side of the Doctor, but in Series 6, he explores more of the darker side, and I think this perfectly reflects the dark and high concept tone of the stories. So you get a great sense that the Doctor himself is growing and changing due to events, rather than just remaining the same no matter what. He becomes a dark and vengeful god during Series 6, before deciding he's grown too big and made too many enemies, returning to the shadows and just becoming a simple traveller again. He has a brilliant character journey throughout the series, and it works perfectly with the wider story the series tells. The last thing I want to touch upon is the role the minisodes and prequels play in Series 6. In previous years, Doctor Who had often taken short detours in the form of fun sketches and prequels establishing the backstory of certain episodes. Series 2 had introduced the idea of TARDISodes, short prequels for every episode in that series. Series 6 resurrects that idea, although only for 6 of its 13 episodes. These range from fun to downright pointless, like the Curse of the Black Spot prequel just being some narration over atmospheric shots from the actual episode, so it feels unnecessary. However, you do get minisodes like The Impossible Astronaut and Let's Kill Hitler, which do a great job setting the scene and establishing aspects of these episodes like the silence and the Doctor's search for melody. They add a lot of character-based context for the episodes, along with the latter showing the aftermath of the mid-series finale and its effect on both the Doctor and Amy. On the whole, the Series 6 prequels don't add much to the episodes, but the series really shines with the Night and the Doctor minisodes. These are a collection of box set exclusive shorts that really nail the benefits of minisodes. They allow you to spend more time with the characters on screen, essentially showing us the downtime of the Doctor and his companions. Bad Night, for example, is a really fun 3-minute sketch centering around the Doctor trying to avert disaster based on a mix-up involving a really important fish and a fly. It's a delightful treat just giving the Doctor, Amy and Rory some goofy time together.
Rory, she's having an emotion!
Then there's also Good Night, which is a very touching short fleshing out the Doctor and Amy's relationship. It's exceptional on a character level, exploring the aftermath of Amy's confusing life and weird timelines. It adds consequence to the Series 5 finale, which is a good use of the minisode format. Lastly, there's First Night and Last Night, which explore the developing relationship between the Doctor and River. We're always told that they spend nights together, so this 2-part minisode actually shows us that. However, it also shows us the true reality of their timey-wimey relationship, since it ends with what at that point was the last time River saw the Doctor before the library. It's a fantastic look at their doomed relationship, and it's balanced out by all the comedy you would expect, so the innate darkness of it all is perfectly hidden underneath a sheen of fun. I just think Series 6 is a good example of expanded media adding to the series and enhancing it with these kinds of bonus features, fleshing out both the universe and its characters in unique and engaging ways. So it deserves to be commended. It's hard to judge Doctor Who Series 6 because there are so many peaks and valleys. I'd argue that it has some of the biggest highs of the show, but also some of the biggest lows. This means the series is very bumpy and complicated. The characters are exceptional and some of the directing is up there with the best of the whole show. The 11th Doctor is in his prime and the standalone episodes are a real treat, with deeply ethical and philosophical tales of faith, sacrifice, identity and companionship. But the actual story arc is a complete mess. It's a jumble of different plot threads that never gains true momentum and ultimately fizzles out without really having an actual solution, since the finale is inconsequential. The main villains of the series start out as some of the strongest, but end up as cannon fodder, and even some of the standalone villains and monsters leave a lot to be desired, with the Cybermen the weakest of the bunch, despite being previously established. Personally, I've always preferred Series 6 to Series 5, but funnily enough, they're almost polar opposites. Series 5 is a good series filled with weak episodes, while Series 6 is a weak series filled with great episodes. As an overall series, it doesn't know what it wants to be, and it struggles under its many moving parts and responsibilities. That's why I'm giving it a C rank on the New Who tier list. Despite being an interconnected series all about a serialised story, it's really the standalone episodes that steal the spotlight and make it worth watching. But that just means Moffat's attempt at serialising Doctor Who failed. By trying to balance tradition and his vision of the future, Moffat failed to tell the story he wanted to tell, and Doctor Who wouldn't try a similar serialised structure for another 10 years. Can Doctor Who ever actually succeed as a narrative drama? Who knows, but as the format becomes more popular and lucrative, Doctor Who Series 6 will always be a shining example of how not to do it. But it's still miles better than the next 5 sorry excuses for episodes I have to suffer through. God help us all. At least I've almost caught up to Harry now. I'm coming for you. And I'd like to give an extra special thank you to my Asbantium level patron Fallon Cortez, my Diamond level patron Daniel Shillito, my Platinum level patron Keelan Gillespie, and all my Gold patrons Calvin, Franz Horn aka Line Vortex, George, Herna Verzog, and Luke_SY. Thank you so much for your support.